One of my friends used to tell me about his aunt. She was not like other women. She carried with her a strangeness, a quiet heaviness that made people uneasy when she entered the room. She often sat apart from gatherings, her thin hands resting on her lap, her gaze distant, as though she were listening to something no one else could hear. One evening, my friend, curious and perhaps reckless, asked her, "Tell me a scary story. Something from the village where you grew up." The aunt's lips trembled with a faint, almost secretive smile. She lowered her voice, as though afraid that even the walls might hear her words. Then she began. Many years ago, in a small village resting at the foot of the northern mountains, there lived an old man named Aja. He was a quiet man, with a beard as white as snow and eyes that seemed to have witnessed centuries. His presence carried a weight. When Aja entered a room, people fell silent, not out of fear, but out of deep respect. They whispered that he had seen things others dared not even name, that he had wandered too far into places men should never tread. Aja's house stood on the edge of the forest, where the wind carried whispers through the trees at night. He often went there alone, carrying only a lantern and a small axe, gathering firewood and rare herbs. "The forest raised me," he would say. And truly, no one else knew its paths as he did. Children sometimes followed him from a distance, but none dared step as far as he went, for the forest was full of legends, and not all of them were kind. But one night, when the winter was at its cruelest, Aja saw something that even he could not explain. It was a night when silence fell heavier than snow. Fog blanketed the village so thickly that even the bark of the dogs was smothered. The air stung like knives, and every window flickered with candlelight as families huddled around their fires. Yet Aja, stubborn and calm as always, lit his lantern, wrapped his cloak tightly around his shoulders, and walked into the forest. He told himself he would gather dry branches before darkness swallowed the woods completely. But as he moved deeper among the trees, the world grew unnaturally still. His boots crunched in the snow, his breath steamed in the air, but there were no other sounds, no owls, no wolves, not even the rustle of branches. Then he heard it, a sound drifting through the fog, faint at first, like the cry of a child, a thin, broken wail, as though someone very small and very lost was sobbing in pain. The sound froze Aja where he stood. He had heard foxes scream before, had mistaken them for human cries. But this was different. It was hoarse, muffled, twisted in a way that made the hairs on his arms bristle. Compelled by something between pity and dread, Aja followed the sound. With each step, it changed. The crying dissolved into whispers, dozens of voices layered upon each other, hissing in a tongue he could not understand. They slithered into his ears, circling his thoughts. His heart sank. His hand trembled around the lantern handle. He came to a place he swore had never been there before. A small cave hidden between the roots of a hill. The air smelled of damp earth, but beneath it was another odour, sickening and sharp, the reek of rotten flesh. On the snow before the cave lay footprints, small ones, like a child's, but they were smeared with blood. Aja's chest tightened. He lifted his lantern high, the light shaking, and hurled it toward the mouth of the cave. The shadows stretched, but nothing was revealed. Only the whispers, curling up from the depths, unbroken, unceasing. Then from behind him the fog shifted, a shadow stepped forth. Aja turned, and his breath caught in his throat. It was tall, taller than any man he had ever seen. Its body was black, without form, as though carved from the darkness itself. Where its eyes should have been, there was nothing. It did not move, it did not breathe, yet Aja felt it staring into him. piercing straight into the marrow of his bones. And then it spoke, not with its mouth, but inside his mind. A voice that was not one but many, overlapping whispers that clawed at his thoughts. You should not be here. The stench of decay washed over him. Arja's knees nearly gave way. He shut his eyes, praying, but when he opened them, the shadow was closer. So close, he could feel the air bend around it. He ran, through the fog, through the snow, his lungs burning, his legs screaming. Yet the voice followed. It ran beside him, inside him. It did not fade when he reached the village. It did not leave when he slammed his door shut and pressed his back against it, his chest heaving. The whispers lingered, echoing in his skull like a curse. From that night onward, Arja was never the same. He stopped going to the forest. He stopped speaking much at all. Villagers saw him awake through the night, a lamp burning by his window, his eyes fixed on the door as though he expected someone or something to knock. When they asked what troubled him, he would only mutter, "He's still looking for me." People pitied him, chalking it up to age. But his eyes told another story. 3 months later, tragedy struck. A child disappeared into the forest. For 2 days the villagers searched, their voices echoing among the trees, their torches blazing. On the 3rd day, they found him, lying near the same hidden cave Arja had spoken of. The boy was alive, his body untouched. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. His eyes were black, not the dark brown of his parents, but utterly black, swallowing all light. Within each eye were 3 pale spots, like cracks in glass. No white remained, and he would not speak, not a single word. The villagers carried him home, but many refused to look him in the face. They said his soul had been stolen, trapped in the cave where the whispers lived. Some swore that at night, when the boy blinked, they could hear a faint voice, not his own, whispering from within. And so the aunt finished her story, her gaze drifting as though she were still listening to echoes only she could hear.